What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? Of course, welcome to another episode of the Victorious Ones podcast, the place where gaming meets comics, meets sports, meets movies, as well as inspiration. Of course, I'm your host, King Von Jr. You can follow me on social media on Twitter at 301 King Von Jr. You can follow me on. You can also follow the show's Twitter page at Victory Pod One. I'm also on Instagram at Mr. King Von Jr. You can follow the show's Instagram page at Victorious Ones Podcast. I'm the social media producer, of course, for Perfect Flex Talk Radio, hosted by a friend of the program, Mike Knox, on Mondays at 6 p.m. And so, like I said, quite a weekend. Quite a string of of events. That have happened thus far. Um, first and foremost, just recently, the trailer dropped for the new Michael Jackson biopic. I can't wait to see it. That's definitely an opening day, um, you know, event, a must see. So I can't wait for April 24th. So his nephew Jafar is going to be playing him, and rightfully so. So if there's anybody who's going to get this biopic done right, this, I think, no pun intended, but this is it. And this is for the real Michael Jackson fans. This is not for the people that want to put others on his level. People want to put for people that want to put Chris Brown on his level. This movie's not for you. For people that want to put Beyonce on his level, this is not for you. For the people that want to put Taylor Swift on his level, this is not for you. For the people who believe, those allegations and conspiracy theories in terms of, in terms of him with them kids, this movie ain't for you. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. If you fed into that foolishness, that's not for you. Like I said, this movie's not for you. This is for. So it's like somebody said on Instagram, that we're not here for, extracurricular, you know, activity, weirdo behavior with this movie. This is not for you. But for those who are, you know, who respect and honor his heritage, his legacy, and everything, everything, his accomplishments, this one is for us. So best believe I will be wearing my Thriller shirt, Thriller jacket. You know what I mean? Best believe I will be in the theater 10 toes down for this movie. You know what I mean? And it's like I said, um, this is, I would say this is the definitive, biopic that we've really, really, really wanted. I don't think there needs to be any other, movies about him after this. Let this be, the flag that's planted on his story, on, like I said, his career and accolades, legacy, all that stuff. Let this be the ultimate flag that gets planted in the ground. So yeah, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. You know what I mean? So if you are not, ready to, do some of the, some of the sing-alongs or whatever, this ain't for you. If you are ready for the Thriller scene, for Billie Jean, all that stuff, off the wall, you name it. If you're ready for all those things, this is that movie for you. I think this is one of those things that will, further remind people why he is the absolute greatest of all time. Much like how The Last Dance further cements and solidified Michael Jordan's status as the greatest of all time. Something like this, gives that extra depth, inside look, whatever you want to call it. And I am more than thrilled, no pun intended, for this when it comes out. So yeah, and also speaking of music, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions took place. Um, you know, took place this past weekend. So congratulations to all the inductees. Of course, the headliners, of course, Outkast. Congratulations to Outkast, to them for being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That was a great acceptance speech. great things start in small rooms. As Andre 3000 famously said, they had the entire Dungeon family on stage with them. You know what I mean? Like he brought the whole crew together, on stage for their crowning achievement in the Hall of Fame. And I knew the Outkast was not going to be denied. Like, come on now, like they're the greatest hip hop duo of all time. So yeah, but like I said, as far as that, and 30, this is 30 years after Andre 3000 was a Source Awards that said the South got something to say, and clearly that has aged like wine. It's aged perfectly. You know what I mean? And so, and their career still stands even to this day. They've survived. Uh, you know, and so yeah, like I said, in the midst of all that stuff that was the noise that's going on around them at that time, they have outlasted some of the other people. You know what I mean? So of course, Tyler the Creator, did the tribute with Bombs Over Baghdad, and that right there is a skill in and of itself to do a song like that. That is a hard song to to have to repeat. Just because of how fast it is, and for Tyler to do that with asthma, I mean, that's a testament to his skill. You know what I mean? And so yeah, like I said, both of them in that song are rapping at a rapid, fast pace. You know what I mean? And like pretty much at Twister levels in terms of how fast they're rapping in that song. And so yeah, like I said, that was a great tribute. I would have picked somebody else other than Doja Cat to do Miss Jackson. Um, Personally, I would have picked Donald Glover, somebody like that. But it is what it is. I digress. Congratulations to Outkast. Congratulations to Salt and Pepper. Finally going to the Hall of Fame that they're well deserved. And so, of course, yeah, Missy Elliott up there. She was their presenter, dressed up as them. And so as far as that, and of course, like I said, so, of course, like our local news anchor, Fox 5 here in this area, and then Marissa, she went to went to LA for the Hall of Fame, ceremony, even though she was dressed up like Pepper from Salt and Pepper for the Halloween episode. But yeah, like I said, as far as that, like I said, Salt and Pepper went to the Hall of Fame. Cyndi Lauper went to the Hall of Fame finally. A lot of people I voted for, thankfully, they made it. As well as rock group Soundgarden went in. The White Stripes, what I mean. So of course, so as far as let's say Jim Carrey was one that inducted Soundgarden. I forgot who inducted the White Stripes, but yeah, they went in. Chubby Checker, long overdue to finally go into the Hall of Fame. So this was definitely one of the greatest Hall of Fame classes that I've ever seen. And that says a lot. And so it's always always amazing, always a privilege, to be able to to give out, to at least contribute with the fan votes. Like I said, to be able to be as a fan to to let your voice be heard with your votes, with those votes with Hall of Fame. So every year I look forward to it. So yeah, my bucket list is eventually to go to one of those ceremonies. But yeah, like I said, as far as that, I was just watching, the Netflix documentary about Eddie Murphy. It's called Being Eddie, and it was a great reflection, retrospective into Eddie's career, his beginnings, and superstardom, and everything like that, and and how he did not fall into the traps and pitfalls and temptations of superstardom, and didn't flame out and die tragically. I mean, like died in a tragic way, like his contemporaries, such as Michael Jackson, Prince, Whitney Houston, mentioned them, and how he didn't have the vices that they had, which is why he's here now. And for the theme for him is just about being a survivor. Um, like I said, watching this, his peers from his generation, like die the way they did, and and having to paper, having to give back to to legends before him, by paying for their tombstones, like for Red Fox, Rick James, and what have you, and it's in like for him, I know those were cautionary tales, like I said, as far as that, but if anything, like I said, to see him, reflect on his career, reflect on his superstardom, um, reflect on his rise to fame and the way that he saved Saturday Night Live, from extinction, really, and the way he carried that brand on his shoulders, and the doors opened up for for the movies and and everything else that followed. Um, Eddie in the '80s you know was an event. That's really what that was, an experience more than anything else. And to see that recapped, the way that it was remarkable. And now he's like I say, he's more he's definitely definitely much more a family man, more chilled out. Um, what I mean, and more like I say, more reflective, more at ease, and and everything like that. And it's just how pretty much. Um, I find it ironic. I'm gonna go and say it. Yeah, he's mentioned it before. I clap back at Cosby about it. But it's amazing um, how Bill Cosby used to chastise Eddie for the language of his material. You know what I mean, and vilified him. But here we are, you know, all this, however many years later, and Eddie is, it's a stay-at-home house dad, and Cosby, how's life turned out? He's behind bars at nearly 90 years old. Um, you know, and so Eddie's become the real life, Cliff Huxtable. He has become, what Bill pretended to be on television. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, like I said, be careful, of those judgments and things like that. So never don't throw stones when you live in a glass house. But that's another story. Um, so in the end, Eddie is on the winning side of history right now, and and just to see how he has raised the bar, what I mean, and how he has elevated comedy in such a way, what I mean, and of course, like I said, you've got guys like Jerry Seinfeld talking about him, you have Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart, Arsenio Hall, of course, and also all uh, clips and excerpts, interviews from his late great brother Charlie, you know, and how Charlie always had his back, um, and it was just remarkable, and like seeing with the way that with the way that Eddie just raised the bar when it came to 48 hours, talking about Trading Places, Delirious, Beverly Hills Cop, all those all those things, like the best of the best when it comes to his catalog. Um, like he's got a goat level catalog when when it comes to that, and how he became the successor to the throne that Richard Pryor had. Um, and so as far as that's concerned, and how people used to compare him and Richard, and Arsenio talked about that too, and how how people like to destructively like pit, black comedians against each other, stuff like that. So, but that's why they made sure to to shut that stuff down, and and be like there's only one Richard Pryor, there's only one Eddie Murphy, and just celebrate them as great as they are, pretty much. What I mean? So, and like I said, to see the influence impact that Eddie has left for future generations. It's like a triple, like a ripple effect, a domino effect. And how they were saying that when Eddie came along, he represented a changing of the guard. Excuse me. Like I said, he represented, like I said, a changing of the guard, the change of the times, when it came to entertainment. And so he was making his rise while, like all the old Hollywood stars, well into their 70s and 80s and stuff like that. So he was, that culture, he represented, that culture shift. So, I mean, like I said, it's pretty much cemented, everything about, about what was, in my estimation, what makes Eddie the greatest. So other than that, pretty much I digress. So, like I said, so as far as that's concerned, and I also saw something where, of the movie news, that apparently the trailer for Doomsday, Avengers Doomsday, is going to be, is going to take place next month in December. So I'm ready for that. Long await, like finally about time. So that's it when it comes to so movie entertainment news, if you will. And now it is time to go into my recaps for the NFL. So I'm going to get this ready up and running, if you will. All right. Hang with me for a moment as we're about to get underway. And here we are when it comes to the NFL recaps in week 10 of the NFL season. And here it is on Thursday Night Football. The Broncos defeated the Raiders 10-7. Of course, as far as the regular NFL, Sunday games, the Colts defeated the Falcons 31-25 in overtime. The Jets defeated the Browns 27-20. Saints defeat the Panthers 17-7. The Patriots defeat the Buccaneers 28-23. Brady's old teams. The Ravens defeat the Vikings 27-19. The Dolphins crushed the Bills 30-13. Very surprised. The Bears defeat the Giants 24-20. Giants, just recently the Giants also fired their coach. Jameis Winston is going to be stepping in as the new starting quarterback. Of course, the Texans defeat the Jaguars 36-29. The Seahawks destroyed the Cardinals 44-22. The Lions destroyed the Commanders 44-22 as well. And the highlight of that game, was the way that the fans, proud that the fans understood the assignment and they booed Trump out the building. That was sentiment. That was symphony right there. I said much deserved boos. I'm glad that they booed him the way that they did. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. You know what I mean? So I say that sarcastically, of course. I have to explain that, but yeah, like I say, Lions stomp out Washington, and so like I say, the fans, they knew the assignment, like unanimously booed that clown out the building. That was the highlight for me. So then, when it comes to Sunday night, of course also the Rams defeat the 49ers, arch rival 49ers 42-26. Rams defeat the Niners 42-26. The Chargers destroyed the Steelers 25-10. And a Monday Night Football, not exactly the game of the weekend, game of the week. You have the Eagles defeat the Packers 10-7. I'm not a big fan of low-scoring games. I'm just going to go ahead and say it like that. So now, I want to say I've gotten all this stuff out of the way, and now it's time for the week of wrestling, and for And so I would say that, of course, some the highlights for the week of wrestling or that for SmackDown were the debut of Lash Legend on the main roster. So it's been solidified. Solidified has been confirmed. Lash Legend is now on WWE's main roster, and now she's teamed up with Nia Jax, and she, of course, that she interfered, and of course, Nia Jax defeat Charlotte Flair. Especially the way that Lash, attacked Alexa Bliss. It reminded me of when China made her debut, and she choked out Terry Runnels and Marlena. While just standing there, at the barricade, I know we're just strangling her. Everybody, was curious, like, who is this? And it kind of reminded me of that. And it's funny how WWE does the Men in Black treatment as if, the Lash and Nia NXT feud didn't happen. So it's just like, they, like I said, it's like they put on the sunglasses like Men in Black, and they use that pen to erase your memory and say this never happened. That's basically what they did, the retcon. So of course, we see that Jey Uso versus The Miz and LA Knight versus a mystery opponent were announced, for John Cena's tournament. Of course, we also had the Women's United States Championship match with Chelsea Green, by way of pinfall, defeated Julia with the phone press, with the phone press, and put her feet on the ropes after distraction of the Alpha Fire to win the Women's United States Championship. So Chelsea Green's a two-time Women's U.S. champion. And afterwards, Chelsea celebrated with Ethan Page, Canadians holding North American championships. How about that? We said Tala Tonga defeated Ray Phoenix by way of pinfall with a choke slam. Afterwards, Sami Zayn saved Ray Phoenix from the MFT beatdown. We also saw that Sami Zayn's on the sweepstakes to enter John Cena's tournament, according to Nick Aldis. Of course, as far as the United States Championship, Ilya Dragunov defeated Johnny Gargano by way of pinfall with the H-bomb to retain the United States Championship in an open challenge match. And we saw that Jade Cargill celebrated winning the WWE Women's title, and she said, "Make no mistake, I'm that," and just slammed the mic, And I know there's a lot of discourse as it pertains to Jade Cargill as champion in spite of her in-ring limitations. And I'm going to say it like this. This is coming from some of the same people who are celebrating Goldberg and treated and looked at him almost like wrestling royalty, just about, and let him have his accolades and what have you, with a highly limited, even more limited than Jade. But this dude's a Hall of Famer. But yet when it comes to Jade, it's just like a completely double standard. And I'm not making excuses for her. I know that there's so much more for her to do, more ground, for her to cover. But at the same time, if her thing is to absolutely dominate and destroy without having a 5-star clinic, let her be that. We saw what she did with Tiffany. That was excellent. That was a masterpiece. That was absolute cinema. The way that she put the end to Tiffany time, I absolutely love it. And I just got finished drawing the picture of Jade. After she attacked Tiffany when she first showed that scar, like I said, amazing. And of course, a shout out to Lauren Moran. She was, the inspiration for this with the way that she drew, did that drawing of Becky Lynch, with the blood all over her face after getting punched by Nia. So I was like, let me do something like that with Jade. But yeah, like I said, as far as that, Like I said, the hypocrisy when it comes to Jade, and the scrutiny is just ridiculous. Like, come on now, you know. And also when it comes to women's wrestling news, congratulations to Naomi and Mercedes Moné, formerly known as Sasha Banks. Of course, for making the PWI Women's Top 250 list. And once again, they dominate the top of the charts, especially after they decided to bet on themselves and walked out the way they did. They took a stand that they did, and here they are still standing. Meanwhile, the men who scrutinized them and demonized them, are completely out of the picture. One, like I said, they both lost power. Each of those guys, that created a smear campaign are out of the picture. Vince, of course, Vince is no longer in charge. If anything, he lost control of his company. John Laurinaitis, got caught up in, some other stuff. That Vince scandal himself as well. So so as far as that's concerned, both reap what they sowed. So, congratulations, like I say, to Naomi and Mercedes. As far as that's concerned, they're well deserved. This is what happens when you, like I said, what happens when you stick to your convictions. You bet on yourself, and let your work speak for itself. And not having to perform and kowtow for anybody. Without having to perform, kowtow, shuck and jive, step and fetch, whatever you name it. They didn't have to, tap dance for nobody. And they're rewarded for it. Naomi would have moved up higher, had she not have to, if she didn't have to, proceed with caution because there's now a baby on board. She would have moved up higher, I believe, had it not been for that pregnancy. But we all know that was, what her and Jimmy always wanted anyway. So congratulations to them. Congratulations to Naomi's success, and this is, I would say, the best run in my estimation of her career. And so now it is time to go into Monday Night Raw, and if anything, I would say that the highlight of this, as Monday Night Raw took place, in Boston, Massachusetts, at TD Garden, hometown of the 18-time champion. You know what I'm saying? The 18-time champion Boston Celtics, and John Cena was the focus of this night. And and the way they were talking about it, everybody, talking about how Cena has done everything except win a particular title, the United States Championship. He had done everything except for that. He had not been a Grand Slam champion yet. And like I say, of course, that was one of the things that they're talking about anyway. Of course, John Cena, his career is quickly coming to a close within a month, literally. But he's not finished making history. And so of course, Cena said that he wanted to show up in front of his fans in Boston one last time. So of course, started that. Of course, after he's being introduced by Triple H at the top of the show, John Cena talked about how his goal in his retirement tour, has been to leave the business better than he found it. Included in that, he says, on the night of his last match, Saturday night's main event will feature WWE superstars hosting exhibition matches against the brightest stars from NXT as well. Of course, Cena continued to talk. He was interrupted by Dominic Mysterio. And we know, I already knew right off the bat what this was going to be about. All the talks about Cena never being a Grand Slam champion. And, like I say, and there was no way that they're going to let Cena go out like that and not accomplish that. He already broke Flair's record at WrestleMania as far as the world title reigns. And so why not have him make even more history and this was going to be the last time, like thinking first and last time he would ever get a chance to challenge for the Intercontinental title. Because his window is this big, you know, uh, and so why not go and capitalize on that? So I figured that as soon as Dom came out, I was like, yeah, they're going, he's going to get it. He's going to get it. So he's interrupted by Dominic, and of course, Dom was talking trash, saying Cena's not his prime anymore. He's already better than Cena's ever been, and Mysterio took, um, took things too far, suggesting he could face Cena anytime, any place, anywhere, and of course, Cena had to, put him in his place. Had to remind them, who he was talking to, and in the midst of his ego and anger and all this other type of stuff, was saying, that Dom apparently forgot who he was talking to, forgot that, where he was, of course he was saying, Cena was saying that, any other place, he'd be more gracious and, let him slide. When it comes to Boston, he was like, I'm invincible. And so yeah. And so just as things were about to heat up even more, Triple H steps in, and he says, that this sounds, like a pretty good time, pretty good era, um, pretty good time, pretty good, great place to do it. And so right then and there, Triple H set up the match immediately. He stepped in and said it sounded like a good plan, and told Dom that he would defend the Intercontinental Championship against Cena immediately, right away. And so, so of course, in historic fashion, in amazing fashion, and also we saw, a few tributes here and there to Eddie Guerrero when it came to the live cheating still from Cena. I like that, and of course Dom, did the frog splash. And at first there was a part of me I was thinking, I hope that they don't send Judgment Day out. This is not the time to do it. This was not the time to, to pull off those shenanigans and just leave it alone. So I'm glad, that they let Cena have that time, especially since, since he's going to be gone, and, like I said, it's not going to matter anymore. But yeah, like I said, as far as that, but there was, a shaky, almost a messy finish, if you will. And Cena went for an attitude adjustment only for Dom to keep the rep down. Mysterio tapped out to an STFU. Then then of course Mysterio ultimately used the championship belt as a weapon, but aided attitude adjustment. The second attitude adjustment came shortly after, with Cena rolling through a pin after the Mysterio frog splash, this time getting a 3 count and securing the Intercontinental title for the first and only time in his career. And I like how Rey Mysterio congratulated John Cena. I'm glad he did what he did. And so of course, clearly, Cena was doing that, out of respect and honor to Dominic's dad, the legendary Rey Mysterio. And now, of course, Cena was also congratulated by Cody and everybody else, in backstage in gorilla position. And of course, he got the picture with Triple H. And so Cena is now a Grand Slam champion. Somebody said online, John Cena has conquered WWE. So as far as I would say that was the highlight, of the night, and just the highlight of this episode right now. And like I said, it couldn't have happened. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. So as far as that's concerned, and also we saw the opening round matches for the last time is now tournament. We have Rusev defeating Damian Priest by way of pinfall. Of course, sorry about that. And we also saw Sheamus defeated Shinsuke Nakamura with the bro kick. And so those are the only opening round tournament matches that happened on Monday. We see that Maxine Dupree was given another shot at Becky Lynch for the Women's Intercontinental Championship. The match took place next Monday. I don't know how many opportunities that Maxine had already, and especially after AJ Lee, AJ Lee came and went. It's just like, they're saying that she's on a multi-year deal, but it felt like a one and done. Like, come on now, you would think that they would follow through at the WrestlePalooza, with something else. But I'm like, yeah, it's just for the sake of trolling. it's just like, yeah, this ain't really as impressive, as we thought it would be. Um, yeah, just like, okay, all right, I'm over it now. And then next up we have, let me say them so many times, but we have CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, and Jey Uso brawl with Bronson Reed, Braun Breaker, and Logan Paul. And CM, Punk came out talking about how he was dressed to fight. So here we go. So we saw the situation start when Punk called up Paul Heyman after Paul's attack the previous Monday. Was Heyman actually called up Logan Paul rather after Paul's attack the previous Monday. Logan came to the ring with Bronson Reed, Braun Breaker, and Paul Heyman. And the Punk offered to fight everyone by himself, but was quickly joined by Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes before the brawl took place. Later that night, CM Punk, of course, Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso went to Adam Pearce and said to tell Heyman to get a team together before calling in William Regal to deliver his trademark yell of War Games. And so as soon as Regal came out, I was like, I knew, especially with the season that we're in, I was waiting for him to say War Games because nobody can say it better than him. And unless War Games is officially underway, And so next up we have the Women's World Championship match: Stephanie Bakir versus Raquel Rodriguez, and so that Stephanie Bakir defeated Raquel by way of pinfall after a corkscrew moonsault. Roxanne Perez attempted to attack Stephanie after the match, but Nikki Bella, who was a ringside, came in for the save. And so after Raquel and Roxanne left the ring, Nikki ended up knocking off Stephanie with the belt to turn heel. That was bound to happen anyway because Nikki wasn't working as a face anyway. And so at least I will say the fact that I'm saying this in 2025, that, Nikki's putting in, more work right now than AJ Lee. Like, come on now. It's funny how the tables turn, right? And that. Sorry about that. But like I said, other than that, anything that those were some of the highlights, and also last but not least, in the main event, the winners and your new women's tag team champions, none other than the Kabuki Warriors. And so, and of course, with interference, thanks to the connection of Lash and Nia. Of course, Alexa Bliss, Charlotte Flair, and Alexa Bliss, lost the tag team titles. But also, as a recap, back on Friday, of course, after Lash's debut, we saw that that Charlotte was in the back tending to Alexa Bliss, that she was receiving medical attention only for Asuka to be disguised as one of the nurses and spit the mist in both their faces. So that was only a sign of things to come. And so like I said, the Kabuki Warriors defeated Asuka. I mean, not Asuka, but they defeated Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair. When Kairi Sane hit Alexa Bliss with the insane elbow. Of course, Flair and Bliss had the match won before interference for Lash Legend and Nia Jax. When I say that they cleared house, they would laying them out clearly. And after the match, Io Sky, had to run in and to save Alexa and Charlotte from a beatdown. By all four of them. When of course, when Io Sky was enough to get the job done, Lash Legend laid her out. She gave her the KO. I said, "Oh my goodness!" Not only that she hit her, but the way she hit her. Lash Legend has a mean haymaker, a nasty forearm, like for real. I don't think anybody in the company can throw a better forearm right now than Lash Legend. It's almost like hearing a gun go off, basically. And so, of course, when Io wasn't enough, that's when Rhea Ripley came to even odds and make a save. And so, of course, after she cleared the ring out, Rhea picked up the microphone and screamed "War Games." I said, "Yeah, this that time, this that season. At least it's starting to look better than expected." Seth Rollins is out and Bianca's out, and they've been dealing with some string of injuries, if you will. So we see that the women's War Games matches is on now. So it's official. We have Rhea Ripley, Charlotte Flair, Alexa Bliss, and Io Sky taking on Nia Jax, Lash Legend, and the Kabuki Warriors. So that's what the women's War Games match is looking like. And I'm excited. So now it's time to go into NXT. It's going to be my finale for the night. As far as last night's episode of NXT, saw that Taylor Paxton was getting a little too trigger happy with some of these title shots. And of course, we saw that Ricky Saints, took on Trick Williams. How about that? Got the names tied together. But yeah, like I said, of course, absolute Ricky Saints. You're reigning, defending NXT champion. So of course, as far as the matches that were advertised were El Grande Americano versus Jasper Troy for the men's speed championship. Tatum Paxley, speaks. Josh Briggs versus Tavion Heights, and Ricky Saints versus Trick Williams for the men's NXT championship. And I must say that I enjoyed that segment with Blake Monroe, talking to her, her alter ego or herself or whatever. Pretty much kind of like talking to her other personality, much like how Mick Foley, had those different personalities, and Bailey has been doing the same thing lately. But I even make a case of that Blake Monroe like she's doing a better job than what Bailey's been doing lately. But just off that segment alone, I said, yeah, this is pretty cool. So they were saying that somebody was saying it was Blake Monroe talking to Mariah May talking to Blake Monroe. Like, yeah, sounded about right. Blake's really in her element right now since joining WWE, and she's really fitting in like a glove. But anyway, Tatum Paxton said that she wants to be a fighting NXT Women's Champion. So we saw the Cullen kick off NXT with Shawn Spears, Nico Vance, Izzy Dane accompanying Tatum Paxton to the ring. And so, of course, as far as Vance and Spears, they stood back while stood in the corner while Izzy Dane and Tatum Paxton grabbed the mics. And so of course, Izzy, just doing everything, just to shut down Tatum and let her know that she should not be, giving out so many title shots or whatever. But yeah, it was also surprised, to not see anything with John Cena, or, any of the veterans for Veterans Day. That kind of came as a surprise. But outside of that, I digress. Um, but yeah, and so of course, we have El Grande Americano versus Jasper Troy. The winner of that match, Jasper Troy, to win the speed championship. We have Thea Hale versus Alba Fire, and Thea Hale is Joe Hendry girl, you know what I mean? And of course, Thea Hale ends up winning, and so we have Skylar Gray versus Fallon Henley, and so of course the winner of that match is Fallon Henley. Of course Fallon that goes on to advance in the tournament, but yeah, of course. So as far as that, who else said Javon Evans came to the ring for a promo when Leon Slater was on the screen, since saying he's not able to be there in person, or so we thought. That's when Dark State showed up to attack Leon Slater to arrive and help Javon Evans, to take him out. And so as far as that's concerned, and like I said, Blake Monroe interviewing herself in the backstage segment, they shot it side by side. And did very well to make it look like she was actually having a conversation with herself. Then we have Tavion Heights versus Josh Briggs, and the winner of this match, Tavion Heights. And last but not least, for the NXT Championship, the last man standing match between Ricky Saints and of course, and Trick Williams. And last time at Halloween Havoc, Ricky Saints defeated Trick. And so, of course, once again, of course, once again, your winner is still NXT champion, of course, absolute Ricky Saints. And of course, it was great to see. And we saw a backstage segment where Trick Williams had to remind Kalani Jordan why she is her, and pretty much a reference to Carmelo Hayes saying that he was him. And I was like, all right, let's see what you did with that. And just as just as Ricky Saints was celebrating, here comes Obafemi, to come in at the end and interrupt the celebration, show to end the show. And so yeah, look forward to this. And weren't really too many highlights of this, but the possibilities for the future are very interesting. And it's, I see that there was something that came out that said Javon Evans is going to be facing Gunther in this tournament, in this Cena World tournament. Hope to see if that's true. But if that's the case, that's definitely going to be a knockout match right there. So, like I said, overall, I am more than thrilled. In terms of Cena becoming a Grand Slam champion. And it's very safe to say that John Cena came, he saw, and he absolutely conquered. So it's really not that much, for me to really cover right now. So I will say this, of course, as far as birthdays. Some of the ones I've already covered. But once again, Keith Lee turned 41 on November 8th. SZA turned 36 on November 8th. Chris Jericho turned 55. As I said before last week, friend of the program, Keats turned 34 on November 9th. And Jericho shared the same birthday. November 10th, Warren G turned 55. Cowboy Bob Orton turned 75. Stan Michael turned 35. Of course, November 11th, Leo Rush turns 31. LA Knight turns 43. And Billy Gunn turns 62. And that's it when it comes to birthdays. And before I go, I would like to give a word of wisdom. And it is that what God has called you to do by the opportunities, provisions, and passions in your life. And the thing is, of course, you can never run from God. And of course, anytime you go in the opposite direction of what God told you to go, you always go down. And so, the thing about it is that when you choose to obey God, He will make provisions for you. And so, of course, that's my word of wisdom. And always remember that you are victorious, because greater is He that is in you than He that is in the world. When you put God in first place, you don't have to worry about being in last place. Please make sure to download this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else that you download podcasts. It's also on YouTube as well. You can watch it. You can watch it by way of YouTube, youtube.com/@West Virginia. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more great content. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for listening. And may this day be the very best day of your life.